Hello everybody and welcome back to Across the Line. Welcome back. I am Tom. Joining me once again is my co-host Zack.
Hello.
Zack, what did we think of the Bahrain 2024 Grand Prix? It was nice to see cars back on track.
Yeah. I was hoping that it was going to be a lot better than it actually was. Even around the midfield, I don't remember that being that many battles, and I know the obvious one is that by about lap 5, Max was 5 seconds ahead of something stupid. He was
pretty far ahead.
Finished the race 10 seconds ahead of what he finished last season.
Yeah.
He had a 12-second gap last season. He had a 22-second gap this season.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's predictable, but I think what really shocked me was just the sheer closeness of it all with the midfield. You mentioned, there wasn't that much overtaken, or at least it seemed that way. I think points for the midfield this year are going to be hard. That's going to be a challenge because the top 10 was sort of, I think, what most people predicted.
I think that Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren battle this year is going to be really good. At the moment, I think Ferrari look like they're just edging it.
Yeah.
But different tracks, different types of races, we could see other cars perform better. There was a few, even in the tail end of last season, where McLaren were flying, where there was just certain tracks they didn't do well on. We could be seeing a case of that, and we could see it that, next week, I don't know, Mercedes could fly ahead of Ferrari, something like that. But I think that battle between those three teams is going to be good this year. And
I hope so.
We need something,
yeah,
because Red Bull are going to run away with it.
I think that's very much the case. It's going to be a landslide victory for the Red Bulls this year. Anyway, let's not get bogged down with all of that. Should we start with the race highlights? Should we talk about our favourite moments from the race?
Sainz podium.
Yeah?
Yeah, really happy that Sainz has finished above Leclerc. Leclerc at times in that race looked like he was driving on ice.
Yeah.
He seemed to be having a lot of trouble with that Ferrari, locked up very early on and then just locked up about 5 more times.
Something wasn't right with the brake pedal there, yeah.
Sainz was flying.
He was good.
Flying.
I like this Carlos that we're seeing at the moment. It's the gloves are off. He's got nowhere next year to go to. He's got somewhat less pressure on him now than he did sort of before. He's not staying at Ferrari. He knows that. I've written that down as one of my highlights. Ferrari was a strong point for me this weekend, seeing the two of them race. Sainz and Charles going wheel to wheel was fantastic to watch. So more of that this season. I think we're going to see more of that. But I think the start of the race was mainly the highlight of it all. It sort of dropped off after about 7-10 laps or so. It was that.
Yeah.
There was the moment where George looked pretty good. He looked pretty racy at the start. And then he just wasn't. It was a tough first race back.
Yeah, it doesn't sell you on the season.
No, not really. Max had no competition at all the entire race. Like, we thought maybe Charles could get him. DRS now being 1 lap instead of 3, we thought maybe there'd be a chance for him to stay with him, but no. Race pace was pretty good on the Red Bulls.
When you see that first long shot down the road and you need them to be close together, but you just see Max and then you see like 2 dots in the background and you're like, This is lap 1. This is obscene.
It's the first F1 race in history. I don't know if you knew this fact. I saw this on Twitter. First F1 race in history for the opening Grand Prix to have 0 retirements. None. Never happened before in the history of the sport.
That's why I went in my predictions. I was like, first race of the season, there's always going to be a DNF. There's always going to be something they didn't account for in testing or in like
we were close.
And Logan was
Logan nearly had an issue, didn't he?
There's a few carrying damage, but yeah, Logan looked like at a certain point he might have gone in. He did stop, and the car was like screaming at him. But he carried on going again. And I think at that point in the race as well, safety car would have made it more exciting.
It would have bunched the field back together. Yeah.
Yeah, where he was stopped, I don't think they'd have done a VSC. I think they'd have gone full safety because he was...
It was the runoff.
He was not far off.
Of turn 3, I think he went off. So yeah, it's a high-speed corner. If their brakes went for argument's sake, that they'd be in the right, in the back of him. So
I think that would have been safety. I think that would have made the race a lot better. I don't think it would have affected the result too much, but I think it would have made it more exciting. You got a few more battles.
Yeah, bringing the field together wouldn't have been an issue. Although, even if they did, something I do want to bring up is that one team, one of the low points of the Grand Prix, Alpine. Again, we'll get onto them in more depth in a few minutes, but they, I say, were a low point of the Grand Prix. They've dropped off significantly. Yeah, they even if the field bunch back up together, I didn't see them gaining more places. I think if anything, Logan would have got past them in the Williams, as would have Hulk in the Haas.
Yeah, I mean we've just gone from a segment of DNFs to cars that should have DNF'd. Yeah, the Alpine is bad, and then is it two staff members? Since
Yes, I've got that written down. The technical director Matt Harmon and the head of aerodynamics Dirk de Beer have reportedly resigned.
Is it resigned, not fired?
It's reported at the moment. I don't think anything's been confirmed officially.
Yeah, damage is done at this point. There's no amount of upgrades that you can throw on that Alpine that will put it in the points.
You can't polish a turd, can you? So since we're on Alpine, let's do a rundown of all the 10 teams that participated in this Grand Prix. So bottom of the Constructors' Championship, Alpine, they had a really bad weekend, didn't they?
And we did both, I believe, predict in our Bahrain predictions that they would be the loser of the weekend.
Yes, very much so. Reports of the drivers being quite sweary. Understandably, the car was not performing well. Drivers being unhappy. Yeah, I know Ocon came in at the end and he did the sort of Lewis Hamilton radio message of, "Oh, let's go, guys, let's keep pushing." But I don't know if those words of encouragement are really gonna help them at the moment.
It's all about energy, positive energy. It's worth about 2 cents a lot.
Next weekend, they're going to upgrade the garage with hashtag Live, Laugh, Love just at the back, just so they can feel a little bit better about themselves. They're scoring no points, but at least they've got some, improvements to the garage. Okay, so next up we got Williams. They also scored no points, but they did have a much better weekend than that of Alpine. They did have issues,
but it looked all right at times. They did a few overtakes. I think even Logan got Yuki early on.
Got Daniel as well, I think.
Yeah. So they've got a bit of pace on them. It just seemed like they had a fair few issues, Logan, and you saw it on Albon's car as well, that it was clearly saying too hot. I think there was a few radio messages with Albon that was basically telling him to sort of manage the car because I think there was some issues with it. So that might have impacted the overall result that he couldn't just push. No, I don't think they'd be too disappointed with their weekend, Williams.
I think it's a good basis to build a car upon. I don't think that car is a back marker anymore, but I don't think it's a midfield contender just yet. I think it's just outside that window, which actually brings me on nicely to the next team in the Constructors. So in 8th place at the moment is RB, V-Carb, whatever you want to call them. Not the best start for the new team. Well, it's the same team, but the new brand that they are now known as.
I predicted that they'd have a good start to the season and a good season overall. It's still left to be known whether they will have a good season overall. Obviously, there's a lot that can change throughout a season.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed with them at Bahrain. I thought that, as I mentioned, there was a few, I think even the Williams, Logan overtaking both of them within the first few laps wasn't great. It didn't look like it had just monstrous pace.
No.
And then, obviously, towards the end of that race, there was the conflict between the two drivers, the team orders, and then it carried on after the race a little bit.
Yeah, the strategy that they did, I think, ruined the chance for them to get points.
I don't disagree with the strategy. I think it wasn't utilized in time.
Well, Yuki qualified P11. I think there was definitely more of a chance for them to score points than to have not. I just don't think they capitalized on a correct tyre strategy. I do think they favored Ricciardo, which towards the end, I
get that though, with him being on the softs. I understand why you'd swap those drivers. I just think that it wasn't the right time. I think they should have swapped him earlier. Daniel was on
I agree with
for
that.
a few laps.
Yeah. It's not as if Yuki was 2 seconds behind the Haas. I think it was Magnussen, yeah. He was within DRS range. He was chasing him. And I don't know if that, as you mentioned, was the right call. It just created unnecessary tensions that I hope don't sort of continue and unravel as the season goes on. However,
I do a little bit.
From a sort of dramatic, drive to survive perspective, I suppose, those little antics could build up to some fisticuffs on track, because you mentioned Yuki did like a dive bomb on him on the cool down lap, went wide, and then proceeded to just gun it past Ricciardo. Yeah, that didn't look
It even
good.
made it in the post race interviews. They both had little comments to say, and you were like, "This is the most passive aggressive post race interviews I've seen in a while." But I kind of want it a little bit, just for that little excitement, that little bit of controversy.
Next, we've got Haas. So they had a pretty good weekend. I think it was unfortunate that Hulk went a little bit too late into turn one on the first corner of the first lap, and he tapped into the back of Stroll, because supposedly he had decent pace, and Magnussen didn't really seem to do too bad, I suppose. Pace was good.
Yeah, no, I don't think they'll be too disappointed again. I don't think Haas will be disappointed. I think it's going to be a really tough season. Just looking at how the top teams are performing, there's no clear drop off like there was at the start of last season with McLaren underperforming.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tall order to actually score points this season. They're going to have to capitalize. Best way to do that is have a car that's ready to do that. When something goes in your favor, a DNF, a crash, anything like that, you can then jump on it. And I think Haas have probably looked like they've got a car that can take advantage of those moments.
Yeah.
It looks a lot better than what I expected it to. It looks a lot better than the Alpine. So that's one team that they're already ahead of. And whether or not it beats the Williams and the Stake is a different question.
Yeah. It sort of brings me back to the comments that the new team principal was bringing up at the start of the season, saying that we're not where we thought we would be. We've brought in upgrades to the car that back in Kota last year that's slowed down the development of this year's car. But in actuality, they aren't at the back of the grid, which I think they very much were last year, or sort of the tail end of last year. Haas were at the back. I don't think that's going to be the case this season. It's so weird to think how Alpine have gone to being a backmarker team all of a sudden. It's this switch is didn't expect that. It's nice to see Haas having the chance to potentially score points going forward. So then next is the last team that didn't, unfortunately, score points, which is Kick Sauber.
Bottas was carrying damage.
Yeah, that sort of ruined his race from turn one. And then they had the 50-second pit stop.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
But looking at the positives, apart from Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, I think, had a fantastic drive. And for me, I would have given him arguably driver of the day.
If he'd have got a point, he would have done.
You think?
Because I think he could have done just off scoring points. It's rare you're going to get driver of the day without being in the points.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. Like, he was 11th, and I don't think he was too far behind that of 10th. But it's just these teams, the midfield, they're really going to struggle. And I think it's a shame, because I thought that car was going to be considerably worse than what it actually was. Its race pace didn't seem too bad. And he gained 6 places, I believe, as well. So, yeah. I think
early.
Yeah, did that very early. And their strategy was decent. They pitted Zhou early, put him on the hards. And then they put him on the hards again at the end. So it nearly worked for them. I just don't think they're quite there yet. But, as we mentioned with development, hopefully they can be in the future. Right, so those are all the non-point scorers. We're going on to the team now that managed to score 3 points so far this season, and that was Aston Martin.
I liked it. I think it's not a million miles away. I know that comparing it to last season where they started podium, I think that Aston, with a lot of the hype around McLaren's rise from last season into this season, with the talk around the RB and their improvement, I just feel like Aston didn't get a whole lot of attention or coverage in the start of the season, and I think that a lot of people just expected that Aston drop off was going to carry on from last season.
Yeah.
I think it surprised a lot of people. I think qualifying, they surprised a lot of people. I think they did well there. Alonso at certain stages put in some good times.
Obviously, the comparison that we have is that of last year. Alonso was on the podium. This year, he was ninth, I believe. It's weird because whilst that doesn't seem that good, the rest of the competition has gotten that much better. For them to score points, I think, is still decent. They finished fifth overall in the constructors at the end of last year. So, sort of being fifth already sort of lines up with where they were that of last season coming onto this one. So that progression, I think, has stayed the same. I think they need to really jump forward again now, and hopefully they can throughout the season. Maybe they could have the boost like McLaren did around Austria and Silverstone. They can get a package that will be able to put them back onto the podium. But no, overall, I thought it was a fairly good race for them. Stroll was unlucky to get knocked back in the opening lap. He went from where he qualified down into 20th and then worked his way back up to that of 10th. So I think it was a pretty good race for Stroll, actually.
Better race than Alonso?
Well, yeah, because Alonso went back places. Well, then again, I suppose Stroll did too, but it's the fact that he had to fight back to where he was.
Yeah.
And obviously Alonso wasn't able to do that. But again, pace for the car seemed good. I wished for more. It's a shame to see them dropped off because it was nice to see Alonso back on the podium and potentially fighting for wins so early last season. But maybe we'll see that trajectory, that pace come back next weekend because they were good in Jeddah last year as well.
I'm interested in their route through the season because one other thing to take into account with this race is their strategy was clearly to wait for a late safety car. You could see that Alonso's
they left Alonso out quite late, didn't they? Yeah.
He was getting picked off. If they'd have got a safety car when he was running in a decent position, before the sort of Mercedes had got back at him, the Ferraris had got back at him, that puts them in a really good position and possibly in that situation, even a podium, if they are in that situation. So I think that some of their race tailed off based on a risky strategy. Might not be the case consistently. Damage to Stroll early on impacted the race. So maybe this isn't a great judgment of how Aston are going to be throughout the season. They could be higher.
I think that's the case for most of these teams. Bringing us on to fourth, McLaren. They scored 12 points. It was interesting to see how close it was between them and Mercedes. I know I'm jumping the gun by going to Mercedes, but these two teams, I think, are so close at the moment. It was looking pretty saucy for a brief moment between these two teams. But no, back to McLaren. 12 points. It was a safe race. Pace seemed fine. But I wished for more, and I'm assuming you did too.
I did. I thought it was a little bit underwhelming compared to where I think they needed to be. Obviously, we can see that the Red Bull's fired off, and they've improved that Red Bull, but still, I think they were further off the Red Bull than they were sort of at their height last season. And you just go, they needed to be closer. They needed to be that.
Everyone did. Everyone needed to be closer.
But it's all the excitement of their rise last season into this season. The fact that they, in testing, you saw Lando putting the car not far off the Red Bull pace, and you're thinking, oh, could we finally have something? And then they finished fourth in the overall. So they were struggling against the Ferrari. They were struggling against Charles, who was really fighting his Ferrari. So I hoped for so much more from McLaren, and I was quite disappointed.
No, same here. It was a solid weekend. Make no sort of judgment about it. I don't think they necessarily had a bad weekend at all. It's just that the expectations, as you mentioned, are so much higher for them now after their string of podiums that they got last year. It was, they were challenging for wins at some points. They very nearly could have won a Grand Prix. Oscar did win a sprint in Qatar. He won that race. So, that pace, they need to find it. They're still using the old wind tunnel, I think Zack mentioned. But then again, the last year's car was also developed in the old wind tunnel, so I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference when they get the new one. But I just wanted more for them, really. And that is pretty much the same story for that of Mercedes. So we'll go on to them. 16 points, third in the constructors at the moment. a fairly meh weekend for them.
I was happier with Mercedes than I was with McLaren.
Really? Oh, I don't know. I
Yeah.
felt like they had more issues. They had, overheating was the main problem. And that, bearing in mind that McLaren has the same engine, it's a Mercedes powered, and McLaren didn't seem to have cooling issues.
My reason for being more happy with Mercedes than McLaren is it's early season. You're going to have issues that they've not expected with the car.
Yeah.
The Mercedes looked like it could fight better than the McLaren. You saw it with Russell firing forward early on, having a go at the Ferraris. I just feel like in an actual like battle, that Mercedes, because George was in a good position until they went, this has got issues, lift and coast, right? So I just think that those things are easier to iron out than it is to build a fast car. And I think they've built a fast car. Now they need to sort the issues.
The temp issues is the main note that I've written down for Mercedes. I expected more from them. When I saw George, he got into P2, I think, by lap 4-ish. And I was like, okay, this is good. And then he was gaining on Max incrementally, very small amounts. And then all of a sudden, he started to drop back. And it was, temp issues and whatnot. But if that car only has temp issues at the moment and, the engine's getting hot, if they can fix that and they still have that pace, I think they could be up there with possibly fighting Ferrari. I don't want to say the Red Bulls just yet because, who knows? But I think they were able to fight with Ferrari George was able to fight with Ferrari for a brief few moments. Lewis, I don't think had the best weekend. I think it was a little bit tricky for him. He was in good spirits though. He seemed okay. Usually when he gets interviewed afterwards, he's a bit down about it. He seems he's come across as quite he's come across way more charismatic than what he usually used to, and I don't know if that's just because he knows he's at Ferrari next year. He's sort of he's clocked out, But it
is. It's like once you've handed your notice in, and those last 2 weeks of work,
you just don't do any of the work. It's just delete emails. Read, don't care. His setup for the car in qualifying, I think he mentioned that he went one way, George went another. George's way was better, but he also went in a direction that was to make the car better in race pace rather than quali. And I don't think we really saw much of that race pace from Lewis. He did get past Piastri, but I think there was just a good tactical play with a pit stop going before Oscar ties her up the temps, and then he was able to get so much further up the road that Oscar couldn't catch back up.
Little wiggle by Oscar as well once he got out of the pits.
Had a little. It was a decent attempt. That must be said. I was happy to see. It's only his second year in Formula One, going up against a 7-time world champion. I love that. I love that there is. He don't care. He's racing. So next we've got Ferrari, 27 points. A pretty good weekend for them, I'd say. A few little issues here and there. Charles having a brake problem throughout most of the race, locking up consistently, going wide on most of the corners. And Carlos, gloves were off. He was fighting him. He was taking no prisoners, including his teammate. So nice to see him have a really good race, if anything. He only gained one position, but it was a solid performance from Carlos.
Yeah, my main thing with the Ferrari, so they did have a really, really good weekend, is why was Charles fighting his car so much, but Carlos seemed to be completely fine? I don't know if it's different setup, but like something seemed really off with Charles this race, because it was early he was locking up, and then it was, remember when they showed the replay of the lockup, and it's like, wait a minute, that wasn't that lockup. And
oh, that's another lap.
It's a different one.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
He was really struggling with that car throughout the whole race.
Well, that's how he lost the position to Perez. He ran wide, didn't he? And I think it came back after a replay, and we saw them both side by side, and it was another lockup.
This is going to be like Daniel McLaren, and just can't drive the car. Carlos is going to fly on, and by the end of the year, Charles will be out of a seat as well. So
just Lewis at Ferrari.
He's on his own.
This is my team now. And finally, the unstoppable force that is I believe the optimal amount of points that any team could score for one weekend. 44 points. They got drivers 1 and 2, and the fastest lap is Red Bull Racing. It was absolute dominance from mainly Max, and Checo had a pretty good support drive too.
Good support drive, 22 seconds behind his teammate.
But he's P2. That's all they want. They just want both their cars on the podium. They don't care how far Perez is. He got second. That's all they want. That's probably what it says in his contract.
I think barring maybe 2 or 3 drivers, you could put most of the grid in that Red Bull and they'd do that.
That car is looking pretty bulletproof. I shouldn't judge because there's a wide variety of track types coming up for the opening few races. But Bahrain has a very high deg, and it managed the soft tyres flawlessly. It's got a lot of different types of corners. It's got, tight entry into first turn 1 and 2. You've got long straight, so it's a powerful circuit. It's a fast circuit. Tight turns. There's fast turns. There's medium speed turns. It did everything. And if it can deal with that track, Bahrain, I can't see it struggling with others. Like, the fact that it struggled with Singapore last year, I thought was bonkers. I really struggle to see this car not winning 24 races. It's that feeling I'm getting at the moment.
This is where I think I'm getting more excited this year about sort of the very tight tracks, maybe some of the actual street circuits, because I think that mistakes are punished harder on these types of races. So I just kind of hope that, like, I don't know, Max just catches a wall somewhere, not in a serious way, but just Max catches a wall and it does maybe a bit of front wing damage. He loses that sort of pace and edge, and it gives it more of an exciting race. I mean, Jeddah could be one of those.
The man is a machine. The man is from the future. He is a Terminator. There is no way he will make a mistake.
He's watching. He keeps referencing things that are happening in the races that he shouldn't be able to see. He's not even focused on the track. He's watching all the screens. He just needs to lose focus for a slight minute and then just clip a wall, little bit of damage. It just takes off that, and then finally we get a good race this season.
These upgrades they're bringing to Imola, is it by any chance like GTA 5 gameplay on his wheel?
It's just
he can see
cinema.
It's like he can see like some gameplay just to keep the sort of Gen Z in him happy. You can see the race. You can see what's going on the screen.
Netflix in the steering wheel.
Yeah, you can watch Drive to Survive. Actually, no, watch something better. No, pretty good weekend for Red Bull. All bar
pretty good.
the main controversy, which we sort of glossed over in the previous episodes. The Horner issues sort of lingered to put a slightly off cherry on top of what is a rather nice cake.
I think it'll linger because I think that it benefits the other teams if it does linger. So even just that sort of tension behind the scenes, you've already seen it. He's had a bit of an argument with Jos. That can't be good just because Max listens to him. So don't rock that boat because Max is worth more than Horner to Red Bull.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So it's you just think it's dangerous.
This story is going to develop for the next few weeks. We're going to see more about that. Moving on swiftly to our last podcast. In case you haven't watched or listened to it, we will leave that somewhere on your screen or available to wherever you're listening to it now. Yeah, that's somewhere there. Our predictions for the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. How well did we do? So, I know for a fact we both said Max Verstappen to get pole.
Okay,
we both got
us.
that.
Let's
yeah,
leave
well
it
done.
there.
Yeah,
really
congratulations.
Good job. We got that.
And then we went on to the podium. So, overall podium, who did you guess third? You guessed Perez?
Yeah.
Close. No banana. I got Sainz for third, so I got that. I'm pretty chuffed with that. I did say Charles second. Didn't get that. You put... Who did you put?
Lando.
You put Lando second. Nice. And then we obviously put Max for pole
Go us.
to
Good
win.
job.
We're
This
so
is
good
the
at this.
kind of analysis and detail you just don't get from any other podcast.
No.
We got the pole and race winner correct. So if you're looking for betting tips, if you're looking for in-depth analysis, this is the place to go.
So there we go. So I got two lovely little points. I don't know if we're scoring this, but I got 2 for that one.
We are scoring this.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm winning.
we are
This is
scoring
great. We're
this.
going to score this. Biggest winner of the weekend. Now, this is somewhat subjective, I would argue.
Mine is definitely wrong.
What? Who did you?
regardless of how
Yes, you
subjective.
put down the Racing
double point
Bulls
scoring
V
Racing
Carb.
Bulls.
Nice, very good. I put down Ferrari as the biggest winners. I would argue they
I'll give you
aren't. Oh, really? Oh, no, I
I'd
would
give
argue
it
that
to
they
you.
are.
I'd give it to you.
You'd give me that? See, because part of me wants to say the biggest winners were Red Bull, like regardless.
But I think that the expectation was already there for Red Bull, whereas I do think Ferrari kind of went, we have built something that is fast. We've built something that works. They beat expectation. They looked above the Mercedes and McLaren, even with Charles struggling, still was able to sort of get past them. I think they've had a good weekend. I don't think they'll be disappointed with that. I'd say that Ferrari are winners of the weekend.
Biggest losers. We got this one right. I said Alpine, and I believe you did too.
Yep.
Yeah.
More needs to be said. Yeah.
No, qualified 19th and 20th. Went on to score no points. Rumored both directors have reportedly resigned, that being the technical and the head of aerodynamics. Yeah, that's a rough weekend. I think they were 100% the biggest losers. News story of the weekend. That was another category we gave ourselves.
If you mash both of ours together, I think we get it.
So mine was it was RB controversy. Yours was
Mercedes controversy with the first and second drivers.
Yes,
having drama over team orders.
So if we
so
said
we mash them both together, we got that right. But unfortunately, I would say no. I went for Mercedes drama. You went for RB drama because of them doing so well. Right?
Yes, they didn't do well. So I don't think Zack Brown was. I think the email he had in drafts went into the bin. No, I'd argue the biggest drama for the weekend was the Red Bull drama. Who would have thought Jos Verstappen continuing to spin and stir that pot of drama? The yes or no questions towards the end of the podcast, we asked if there was going to be a safety car. We both said yes. There was indeed no safety car. We said DNFs. I said 2. You said 3. Were there any DNFs? No. There were not. I think we may as well have guessed how many yellow flags are going to be waved. So overall, I think there were some solid predictions. The most predictable predictions came true. Turns out, however, someone that did get quite a lot of their F1 knowledge correct was Ian. So for those who remember last time in the podcast, episode, whatever, we asked our friend Ian, who knows nothing about Formula One, to guess how many drivers will score points. So to recap, he said Max Verstappen, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Charles, Carlos, Lando, Lance, Gasly, Albon, and Hulk. Of those 10, 3 didn't finish in the points, and he knows jack shite about Formula One. So I think that's pretty good. 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
That's a pass, right? That's like a B minus?
And he definitely picked some of those drivers based on the fact that he liked their names. So.
Yes. Well, he can't pronounce half of them. So well done, Ian. That's 7 out of 10. Congratulations. We'll have another challenge for him this week when we go racing in Jeddah, which brings us nicely on to our hopes for the next Grand Prix. To wrap up this episode today, Zack, anything you hope to see happen in the next race? Do you want it to be closer? I assume you do.
I think we definitely get a safety car at Jeddah. Historically, there's been a little bit more there in terms of you've got the walls, you've got it being a bit.
Yeah,
it's tighter. Mistakes are punished. I think we see crash at Jeddah. I think we see a safety car. Certain point around the track, maybe one of the Alpine drivers goes, fuck it, and just crashes into the wall to get out of the car. I don't know. I think that we definitely get a lot more excitement. I think Jeddah would be a better race.
I was initially against Jeddah when it first joined the calendar back in 21, but it's actually become one of my favourite street circuits on the calendar. I find I qualifying round there. I'm speaking as someone who's only ever raced around it in the games. I absolutely love it. It's really fast. It's it's a good track, especially on the Saturday. Well, the Friday this time because of the Ramadan, I believe. But yes, I'm excited for it. I'm hoping for, as you mentioned, I think a safety car is pretty good. I don't know why I'm doing the politician thing with my thumb. I'm doing that sort of. There must be a safety car. I want more overtakes. I just want on-track battles.
Yeah.
And
I don't think it's an overtakey place.
It's not, but I think the DRS coming onto the last corner onto the straight, not last year, I think it was 22, where Charles and Max had a pretty good little battle where they like braked one before the other so that they got DRS to overtake them on that straight. So I'd quite like to see someone like Alonso, the wise old fox that he is, to bring out some clever, I don't know, tactical play in the race. I just want to see racing. I just want to see more battles. Just give me something, please, Jeddah. Can you?
It'll give a safety car for sure. Safety car race, without doubt.
There we go. That has been our race review of the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope you enjoyed the race. Let us know down below if you did enjoy it. Are you looking forward to Jeddah in a few days' time? You know I am. Regardless, it's Formula One. It's a sport that I've loved most of my life, but it has these droughts of dominance, which isn't unprecedented in the sport. So yes, thank you very much for watching. Zach, any final words?
No.
Cool. If you want to stay up to date with all our episodes and you want to listen to all our podcasts, there will be links in the description down below if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Spotify, there'll be more links down below. And all our socials will either be displayed on screen now or down below. You know the drill. Make sure to subscribe and stay up to date with all our content on the channel. Ring the bell. That's our saying now, isn't it? Ring that bell. Smash that bell. Caress.
Send an email to that bell.
Send a strongly worded email to that bell.
Mother's Day's coming up. Call the bell. Just
do something to that bell for the love of God. So yes, thank you very much for watching. We will speak to you guys. Speak to you guys. We don't speak to them. Why do I say that? We will talk to.
If you guys speak to the bell, it might speak back.
Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will see you guys in the next episode. But until then, goodbye.